Okay. Some of us are back.
Yeah, we've been back and forth repeatedly.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Dave.
and weren't sure what was going to happen given the big disruption. Michael finally ended his call and left without listening and being aware that, he had totally disrupted the meeting.
Okay.
Give him hell, Eric.
Yeah,
Hi, Mary Elizabeth.
so I don't know if anyone else is coming back.
Yeah, I think they might have been put off by the craziness.
Yeah,
Well, this is my fourth login.
yeah, some similar with me, but until last time, Michael was always on and always unaware.
Well, I think I can, I'm looking to see how to mute all and do all that sort of thing, but I don't see that on here either. I'm not used to like I said, I'm not used to using this. I can make
This is-
breakout rooms.
This is the club's account.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so what I did was I got out of it completely, shut it all down, and went back and started it as the same meeting
Mm-hmm.
because the link still works. But anyway, we'll see what happens. All right. Well, let's go back and start over. How's that? And like I said, please feel free to ask questions at any time. And I'll share my screen theoretically. Okay. Everybody can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So we were just talking about how we're going to get rid of these feet, which are weird in the position that they are. And the content aware fill is a good tool to get rid of those. So I made a selection using the lasso tool over here. And by the way, you can go up and go to the top here to see where it says feather.
Mm-hmm.
And that will determine what the edge is like, whether it's very soft or very hard. It has a feather of 1, which is fairly hard. And I'm going to see how that works with this. So we'll see how that works. If it doesn't work well, then I'll change the feather and we'll see if that does any better. So that's something to be aware of. And so this is the shortcut version that I'm showing you. And that is Shift and backspace on a PC or Shift and delete on a Mac. And it should bring up this little box for a fill. And you need to choose content aware if it didn't choose it for you. Since that's the way I use it, that's the only way I use this shortcut. So that's the way it comes up. And now I'm going to say OK. And it's going to look, as I said before we got interrupted, it's going to look at the foam. It's going to look at the color of the water here. And it's going to try to make an intelligent decision to get rid of those feet and fill it back in with something else. And so here we go. Okay. So it made kind
Pretty
of
good.
a pretty good selection. It's a little odd with this splash here because it's taking it from here. So, but it works, right? You wouldn't really notice it. So while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do Control Z and take us back to where we were originally. I'm also going to go back over here to the right-hand side, and I'm going to duplicate this layer so that we can always look back and see what the first layer was. And so now I'm also working non-destructively, if you've heard that term.
Mm-hmm. Did you also do this as like an adjustment layer?
No, don't need any adjustment layers. You just need a separate layer.
Oh, just to keep it totally, okay, you're just copying the background layer to.
Yeah,
to do
that way I can go back and forth easily with us too and show it. But it also just gives you another version of it. And now I'm only going to affect this new layer that I just corrected or created. So I use this lasso tool. So just for fun, let's use a different tool. I'm going to use the polygon lasso tool. This also works with feathers up here. So I'm going to use, say, 6 just for the heck of it, just to see what that does, because we used 1 last time. And this is a slightly different tool. With the lasso tool, I held it down and I made a circle around this. With this, you have to, it's creating polygons. So it wants to do something where you are going to make a more precise selection. And in the old days of Photoshop, that's the only way you could really make a good selection, was with the polygon tool.
Are you clicking in and out then to make the polygon?
Exactly.
Each point.
Yeah, each point. So let me, I'll do that again. So I'm going to click to create the first point. I'm going to drag it down here and click again. Click, 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 click.
Got it. Okay.
Oops.
And sometimes it'll, you can't work too fast because it won't like it. Okay, so I have my selection here, and I'm going to do the same way. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to show you the other way too. This is the easy way we're going to do. Shift backspace since I'm on a PC, or shift delete, and let's see what it does. And actually, that is a little better.
Good.
So you'd have to choose between these to see what you want to do. So I'm going to do Control Z again. I'm going to go back to the original. And then to get out of these selections, by the way, you need to go back up. The easiest way for me is I go up here to this square tool, which is the marquee selection, and make sure I'm on that. And then I'll just click anywhere besides it, and it makes it go away. All right, so now let's do something a little different. We're going to take this same tool, and I'm going to make a new selection around here. And now I'm going to do what most of the YouTube things teach you. By the way, they don't teach you the shortcut method, but that's much easier. But you go to Edit, and you can see that there's a fill, but there's also a content aware fill. There's 2 of these. So let's use the fill first, because that'll be most like what we just did, because it gives you this same box that I used on the shortcut. And you can say, okay. And that's what it created this time. And you can see it's slightly different, right? It's got these big blobs, but it also has a little bit of this fine blobs like from here. So I'm going to go back. So I still got my selection, but this time I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to use Edit, Content Aware Fill. And it says, use the sampling brush tool to sample an area. So I'm going to say, okay. And so now it's giving me this tool. So I want to get rid of these feet. So it wants to know, what area do you want to use outside of the selection area in order to fill that space? So this time I'm going to choose what area I wanted to use. I want to use all of this. And you notice, can you see how it's not going all the way up to the edge of the line?
Yeah.
And the reason it's not doing that is that's where the feather is.
Mm-hmm.
That's that 6 degrees of feather. So I'm going to say, here, use all of this area and use this area. That's what I want you to use. And then let's see what it does. So once you've done it, then you can say apply. And that shows you that it made that area. Now, it actually didn't do as good a job because there's too much dark of this dark area over here. So I'm going to go back. And that's Control Z, by the way, going back each time, if you didn't know that. And that works in any program. It works in Acrobat, it works in Word, it works in everything.
But here you also have history. You could go back if you chose to, right?
You're right. You can see over to the right-hand side, I have History panel.
Yeah.
I can open that up and it shows me everything I've done so far.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this a little differently this time. So we'll do Edit, Content Aware Fill, use the sampling brush. And so this time I'm going to choose this area. Because by choosing underneath it, that water or that sandy looking water was too dark. And let's see if this will give us enough. So apply it and say, okay, and click off. It still left kind of an edge that I don't care for. So it's almost like it's better to do the other way around. To do the shortcut version seemed to work.
Is that because the feather went back to 0, or was it?
Did it? Oh, let's go.
Mm,
Go back. No,
I wasn't paying attention till now, but
no, I think you're right. The feather did go to 0. So let's go to, we had it at 6. So
6.
we'll go back to 6. Now, once you do that, now I have to make a new selection because it's not going to remember that selection. So it's going to have whatever the previous selection was. So I have to tell it 6, and then I make a new selection. There is a way around that, but that's a whole nother thing to teach. So
now you're selecting fairly closely around the feet. You could be a little looser around that, and
I could.
maybe that would.
I could, and maybe that would change things too.
Uh-huh.
It's all experimentation. So let's go back, Content Aware Fill. Okay. And I'm going to choose this area. And a little higher up here.
Are you trying to choose an area that's, say, at least the size of the selected area?
Yes. You
Okay.
need to choose an area about that same size.
Similar or greater, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's still left an edge that I'm not crazy about. And it's a little too repetitious with these droplets. So
yeah, it did better with the other
with the quick tool or
one
the
out of fill. Yeah.
yeah, the shortcut and the fill. So a lot of people use this Content Aware Fill, and I don't really care for it. It doesn't seem to do the job, but maybe I'm missing something. But anyway, let's go to another image and we'll try something different.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't even realize they were different. I thought it was just 2 paths to the same thing.
Yeah, actually they're different. And I need to move my screen a little bit. So I turn this one off.
I'm just noticing you have an extra copy that was made of the, well, you've left it now, but I had noticed that you had, you know, an extra layer I didn't see before. That was just the selected area and what it put in.
Yes, and you can merge those together, but
Okay, yeah, I didn't see that quickly enough.
yeah, sorry. All right, so let's do the same thing with this and we'll see what we get. So we're going to come back here and I'm going to use the lasso tool, lasso, and I'm going to do a broad area just to see, and I'm holding it down. And
Huh.
these are my daughters on the left here, and there's some errant swimmer in the way that we don't want. And now I'm going to do the shortcut version, Shift backspace or Shift delete. I'm using content aware. I'm using color adaptation is clicked, by the way. It is selected. And sometimes you want to unselect that. Now that worked pretty well, but you can still see down here a little bit of that person. But here's an interesting trick. You can do Shift backspace again
Huh.
with the exact same selection you just had, and it's going to modify that. And then I'm going to do it yet again. Shift backspace, content aware, okay. Okay, now it's starting to create a little bit more. And I might have, if I was really worried about this image, I would go in and I would clone out that dark area there, or turned it into a great white shark, maybe. All right, so let's go back. Oh, well, let me show you the two. So that's before and after. So it does a reasonable job, and you may have to touch up with the clone tool. But let's go back to here. And let's see if we get anything different. I'm going to use the exact same selection this time. And I'm going to say fill. And let's see if that does anything different than the shortcut. It should not, but let's just see. No, okay. So that confirms that. All right, so now I'm going to do the content aware tool with the same selection. Content aware fill. And then it's going to give me the sampling brush. And that sampling brush, I'm going to choose all of this. And above.
Looks like you might not have much feathering because you're right up against the selection, maybe.
Right, there's only one point of feather in there.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just going to say, okay, you don't always have to say apply, by the way. I'm just going to say, okay. And it took him out. But once again, it's not as good a selection as we got with the quick tool, right?
Mm.
With the shortcuts. It just gave a better look. So whoever's using content aware, maybe they're using it on certain landscapes or other areas, but I'm not seeing it myself. Let's go to another image and we'll show you something a little simpler and a little, not that image. Go to this image, whoops. And I was playing with that. That was the image that I started with. And this is more common. You're going to have somebody in the background or somebody on the side or that you're going to want to get rid of. So let's try out and see what we get here. I'm going to take this tool. Now, as you're holding it down, by the way, when you get to the edge, you go as far to the right as you can, and it will select just the edge. I'm above it, but it's selecting just the edge. And then I'm going to do Shift backspace. And it got rid of it. However,
Again.
it's pretty good, but once again, there's too much of this green wave. And as you can see over here, there's more blue. So I would come back, I would clone this blue over top of this just to clean it up a little bit. And let's see what we get with the content aware. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna purposely try to take some of this blue over here to see if that helps us. Obviously, I don't want to take any part of her because that'll duplicate over there. Don't want to do that. And let's see what that gives us. Didn't pick up any of the blue. It still just did that. And there's an edge, once
Yeah.
again, that I don't like. So for these examples anyway, avoid content aware fill with and just use fill. Now let me show you some things it's not good for. What it's not good for is things like this, where there's highly detailed area and not clear demarcations between items. So for example, let's say I only wanted these two bunches over here, and I just wanted this to go away. There's too much detail here for it to really work, but let's see what it gives us. So I'm going to do the lasso tool, and it has a feather of 1. Actually, just for the heck of it, I'm going to use my marquee tool and come back and click off of that. For the heck of it, let's do a larger feather. And the feather can go anywhere from, you could probably have like a 200 feather in there. As long as you had large enough file, you could have a big giant feather. And there's really cool ways to use that. And someday maybe I'll do a class on that. But for now, let's say 10 just to be different. And we'll do 10. Okay. So we want that to go away. So first of all, we'll do the fill, which is shortcut of Shift Backspace, content aware. Okay. And it tried, but I've got part of a grape, I've got part of a branch. Yeah, it really didn't know what to do. So let's Control Z, and let's see what content aware fill will do. I have no idea what that's going to do, but okay, so since I need some branch, I'll use some of this branch. I'll use some of this background. I'll use some of this background over here. And I'll use some grape leaf area to kind of fill in and see if that helps. And I'll say, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Made a giant grape leaf. So
Yeah.
there's just some things you can't do. It's not for that. If I wanted to get those out of there, the way I would do it is I would do a selection of a leaf. So I would use my polygon lasso tool here, by the way, and I would go back to 0 because I would want a very tight edge. And I'm just going to do this quickly, but you really have to have a lot of patience. But since been working in Photoshop for 20 years, I have a lot of patience because you used to have maximum amounts of patience. I used Photoshop before they had layers, and layers has just been a godsend, and a history panel, all those kinds of things that are really important to Photoshop now, but didn't exist before. So I'll go around this leaf. Well, I tried to do it too quickly, but so now what I'm going to do is I am going to layer this. So layer via copy. So I copied it and you can't see it. It's up here on a new layer on the right-hand side. And
How did you get that dialog box that gave you the choice layer via copy?
I right-clicked on the
Right
leaf,
click.
on the
Okay.
selection, yeah. And this is being recorded, so
Ah.
you can follow it at your leisure if you wish. So this gives me the ability to do this. And then I could duplicate that level layer. So I'm going to right click on that leaf layer and duplicate it. There are other ways to do it too. And then I could hide those grapes. And of course, I do a much more detailed selection, and I might take a leaf from down here and use it to cover and anything. So that really is kind of a way to make that work a little better. So let's go back to here. And I want to talk about selection tools a little bit more, and we'll just do selection tools now instead of content aware fill, since you've seen a few examples of that. So over here, we've got a tool, and it's a quick selection tool. If you're not familiar with it, you should be, because it's really helpful. And I'm going to take and click on that quick selection tool, and it gives me a circle. And as you can see, her face is in shadow a little bit. And I want to brighten that up. And I'm going to actually make that size of that a little smaller. Hardness is not critical. You don't want it on the softest possible, which is here. You don't want it on the hardest possible, which is there, which really creates hard lines. So you want it to be around 15%, but you could probably leave it on 15% and spacing, a low amount of spacing. And all that means is that if you click and hold and click and hold and click and hold, it's going to make, it could make several selections for you, but don't worry about spacing. It's not important. And then I'm going to come back here, and all I do is click on her forehead and it shows her whole head. And then I'm going to do image adjustments, brightness and contrast. And I'm just going to bring the brightness up so I can see her face a little better. And I might play with contrast a little bit if we want to give her a tiny bit of contrast. And then come back to my marquee. Whoops. I have to say okay, and then I can just click off of that with the marquee tool, and now she's brighter. And it doesn't leave any lines around it. That softness level that I had was just fine for that. So it is fantastic to touch up photographs of family, for example. You get somebody's always in shadow, or somebody's, the person next to them is creating a shadow on top. So it's an easy way to select just one face. Let's just try to do something more difficult here. I'm going to take this quick selection tool, and I'm going to try to do just the boot. Not bad. It picked up the shadow of the boot as well. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to click the Alt, or on a Mac, that is the Command key. And I'm just going to drag that across there. And that took away part of that selection.
So you were holding down Alt and then move the boundary, or?
Yes. So hold down Alt, and then I moved across the area that I didn't want.
Oh,
And it took it away.
okay.
And that can be really handy for a lot of, I use it all the time for certain selections. And so now I'm going to do image adjustment, and I'll do a little brightness on that. And not that her boot needs to be any brighter, but just play with it a little bit. But you can see that there'll be applications for that in a lot of things. Now, one more thing that's a little bit distracting is you can see the tether attached to the surfboard here. So that tether actually goes into the water and looks almost like a little snake out there. So let's go to let's try out our content aware tool. Whoops. on the lasso tool. And I'm going to try to do it fairly tight because I only wanted to draw tightly around here. I don't want to draw from over here as to where it's going to, what it's going to replace with. And then we're going to do edit, fill. I'm not using the shortcut this time, but it's the same as you found out. And did a pretty darn good job. You could also, I could also use the clone tool, which would do a great job. I use the clone tool a lot, but you have to play with it and know a little bit about it over time. So I'm going to use a larger brush, like 61 pixels. And I'm going to take, and you click Alt to select the area that you want to copy or duplicate, and put that on top. And I think that actually did a little bit better job.
Mhm.
My daughters knew I was using their pictures, they would not be happy. But that's too bad. That's the prerogative of a dad. All right. One more thing, just for fun, if you guys want to spend a couple more minutes,
Sure.
is have you used, raise your hand if you've used the select subject tool.
No.
No.
Okay, I'll show you something. We'll try it with this. I haven't tried it with this, but let's see if it works. So you go over to that same quick selection tool, you click that, and then it gives you some boxes up here. Select subject and select and mask. Do you see those?
Mhm.
No.
At the top,
Oh. Okay.
select subject. So I'm just going to click subject, select subject, and it's going to try to pick out my daughter from the rest of the, and it did a pretty damn good job. Didn't pick the board, it didn't pick the water, it picked just her.
And you
And-
didn't have to move the cursor over near her at all.
I didn't do anything. I just clicked select subject. Now, one thing it did make a mistake on is that, see, it's right around her stomach area there.
Right.
It made a hole in her that doesn't really there. So all you do is click Alt or Command and then, whoops, sorry, other way around. All you do is drag on top of that because she's got some sort of flap or something on there that looks like it might be water. But it is so good, and they've improved this as well, that you often see a person standing and you might see the crook of their elbow. Let's say I got my head on my hand, right? And you want to cut all this area out, right? If you want to cut that out, well, this select subject tool, I'd say 75% of the time, it knows and it cuts that area out. So I could put a different background behind a model. It makes life so easy. It's very smart. And one thing that it missed part of the tether, you can see that, but that's okay. We can fix that. So I'm going to hit my Alt key. I'm going to make a very small brush. I'm going to hit my Alt key and I'm going to, oops, I'm not going to hit my Alt key. Okay. Let's go back. My brush is too big. I'm going to go back down to like 3. You can also type in this box. I'm dragging that thing and it's not wanting to go to 3. So you can also type in that box and then you can just click and drag. there's a little tiny plus symbol in the cursor that I'm dragging.
Oops.
And it may not do a perfect job, but it does okay. And I'm going to use the Alt key to take away that portion of it. And then I could do select inverse. And I already have a foreground color over here of aqua blue that I was using for a client project. So I'm just going to use that and say, okay. And there she is. So you could do that.
And
with-
can you take, can you take her out of there and put her somewhere else?
I can. Would you like to see me put her somewhere else?
I would like you to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to select inverse again, which is only going to give me her.
Uh-huh.
And then I'll go back to one of those other images that we had recently. Go to this one, although it's going to look a little funny in this one, but anyway. And then I'm going to take the image that we were on, which is this Maui 157, and pull that into this other photograph. And now she is there. And then I'm going to click the move tool up here in the upper left. And then it's going to give me these scissors. Can you see the scissors when it's on the image? And I'm just going to take her. And she's over here now.
Uh-huh.
She is surfing next to herself. And she's covering up her sister's weird feet. And that's just a matter of dragging one image into another image. And you can do that with text. You can do that with a myriad of things. And I'll do combining images in a Photoshop class. That might be a little longer than 15 minutes of demonstration, but we'll end up doing something like that at a later date.
Wow.
Are there things that come to mind that you would like to see in a future class?
Are they always going to be on Wednesday?
They will probably always be on Wednesday because we have too many Monday classes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I was concerned.
Yeah, and I was overlapping with a few people and I got complaints. So I said, I will move to Wednesdays. And Chris has one. Do you have yours still, Chris?
I've been going to the monochrome one and was thinking about, taking Photoshop instead of that because, because I just fairly recently broke down and subscribed to Photoshop and Lightroom. And
Right.
there's a lot that I don't know, having older versions,
Yeah.
standalone versions.
And by the way, when I pulled her over and put her in this other photograph, it automatically makes a separate layer out of her.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
So I can turn her off or turn her on. I can do Control T, that's a shortcut, which is really transform. I can grab this edge and I can make her the subject. I can make her big. And if I was really wanting to do this, I would fix her boots and other things, but this isn't a real demonstration.
Cool.
And I can, at this point, I can just click off of her to leave her at this, or actually I can do escape and put her back to where she was. And since I don't want her here forever, I'm going to just delete that layer. And she's still over here on this layer. And if you ever want to go back to where she was, you've got a history here. And we did a bunch of things to this, but there she is back where she was. And there she is with the fill in the background. And did we never did, I guess, end up getting rid of the fat guy on the surfboard behind her. So I guess I can do that as the final example here. But think about if there's anything people would like to see me demonstrate in Photoshop, I certainly can. And I'll try to make it as simple and followable as possible. And also it's always recorded, so you can follow at your own pace. So we will do the shortcut version this time. Shift, backspace, and you can see it's on foreground color because I used that last.
Yes.
So you have to make sure that you have content aware, otherwise you're going to get a big splotch of aqua blue there.
Yeah.
And oh, you know what? Now see, this was a good
Ah.
demonstration. See why there's still part of him, because my feather was
Feathering.
large, right? So I got to go back. And we'll go back to, we can even go do 0 for feather. And click and hold as you create a circle around that guy. Edit, fill. I'm doing it the other way this time instead of the shortcut, so you can do it either way. Content aware, and it's done. But it's just a great way to get rid of stuff very quickly, and very little fuss or muss about it. And there's lots of applications. I use it probably once a week. I use it in my work. So
I have a question related to this, the selection.
yeah,
When you selected her using select subject, you had nothing in the image selected. What if you had, say there were multiple people, but you really just wanted to select one of them? Could you like do a rough selection around the person you wanted and then use the same tool and it would search within the selection you already made?
well, let's take an image that has 2 things in it. So you take this and you do the quick selection tool, and I'm going to do a larger size brush so you can see it. So that brush is over her hair right now. So I'm going to select her. And then let's say I wanted to select the feet also. So I use Shift, hold down Shift while I'm selecting these feet. So you can select more than one thing at a time. Is that what you're thinking?
I was thinking more, well, in your other example, you had nothing selected and it knew to select your daughter pretty
Yes,
well.
yes.
I was just wondering if you already had a selection within the image, whether it, how it would handle that, or if it would, if that was a refinement to this sort of thing.
Well, let's find out. So I have a selection. And then if I click select subject, is that what you're thinking?
Well, I was, well, ideally,
Other
well,
way around?
maybe a very, very coarse selection around her. Here you've got a very tight selection.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that was not a select subject, though. That was strictly a. Okay, so walk me through it again, what you want me to do. You want me to
okay,
use
yeah,
this
you've got
tool,
nothing selected and say you just
the lasso?
roughly selected the top, the very roughly around the, yeah, not even that closely. Just, I'm just wondering if you can have a select subject within a selection.
It went away.
Yeah, you don't have the select subject option, I guess, if you have a selection. So
Correct.
maybe maybe
Because
it
I'm
just
using up
works,
the subject it would select.
right? Maybe nothing, that tool works only if nothing is selected, I'm guessing. I can play with it myself. So.
Let's try this. I'll select this and see if it, yeah, it goes away.
Okay.
But if you had, say, two people and you did select subject, would it select both of them?
Yes,
And then you could go to the marquee tool and unselect one of them?
you could. And there's also a tool called Select All. Let's see. I need a picture with multiple people in it. So let's find one. Probably. Well, let's try the grapes. We might be able to do that. Select subject, let's see. Yeah, so it's selecting multiple grapes, right? A few other things too. And then you would hit the Alt key to take it away, or the Command key in Mac to take away the part that you don't want. I just took away part of what I wanted, but so you take away all of this and just keep the grapes theoretically.
Yeah.
There's also, I demonstrated this in a class a while back. And I just, by the way, I let go of Alt and then I just clicked in there again to select that grape that I missed. And I could go back up here and select these grapes too. But yes, if you had multiple people, that's exactly how you would handle it. There's also, like I said, there's something called Select All. I'm going to hit the Alt and do a negative. And I'm going to select inverse just for fun. And there's my grapes. You can see there's some pieces that it missed that we'd have to go back and fix. But let me see if I can find that select all, because I think I can show that to you. Not in this image though. So I'm going to get out of here. It's a new tool, the select all thing, by the way. And I used it on a photograph to select multiple guitars in a demonstration that I did. And
Might it be under the select menu?
that would be too easy, Chris, but it's not there.
Well,
Select
it is
all.
there. Select all.
Yeah, it's at the top.
Well, that just selects the whole image. It
Oh, so
doesn't
you mean
do-
something different?
Oh, this is different from that.
Yeah, it's select all subjects. It's called
Oh.
select all, but it's select all subjects kind of thing. Okay, well, that's not working. All right, well, that'll give you a little bit of an update on using the selection tools. These are very important in Photoshop. I use them every time I do a photograph. I'll use some selection tool or other. I don't use the cropping tool, by the way. I use this marquee tool because then I can control, like this would make a great, this image as a square, right? It doesn't need to be, and I don't need to use the cropping tool that I have to pull in each side or the top of the side. I can just make a square and just crop it. And all I'm doing is I'm going to select the inverse of what I just selected and delete it. And I'm going to put white in, which is my background color. And now I've got a square, and I've also made soft edges because I had a feather. If you had no feather, it would be perfectly sharp edge. So I'll just change that feather. And and then you get a sharp edge. All right, guys,
Okay,
we'll do this again next month. And if you think of anything that you'd like me to do, please send it to me. And if there's an image that you say, this one's going to be tough, how's he going to fix this one? Send it to me and tell me what you want and I'll fix it. So,
Okay, cool. I'll
yeah.
take you up on that.
thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Bye now.
Eric. It was great.
This is good. Thanks.
You're welcome.